Hi, Year Sevens. I'm just going to run you through the characters of Dougy just to set you up for some of the tasks that you'll be completing in the next 2 weeks. So, I'm going to go through each character individually and give you some information about these characters, things that you already know from having read the book, but it might be good to go over them again and see how all of these characters interact with each other. At the end, I'm going to explain what your task is for this lesson, just so you understand what it is that we expect from you. So, our first character is Cooper. Cooper is one of the white men who started the war in town against the Aboriginals. Because of Cooper's hateful attitude towards the Aboriginals, many of them, including Dougy, hate him. Cooper has a father in town who he doesn't treat very well. Cooper blames a lot of his own struggles on the Aboriginals in town. Our next character is Dougy. Dougy is the protagonist of the story. Now, the protagonist is the main character of a story that the reader goes for, wants to succeed. So the protagonist is the person who the story is generally about. The antagonist is the person who tries to stop the protagonist from succeeding or who gets in their way. Dougy is a young Aboriginal boy who lives in a small town in Queensland. He is a slow learner but has other skills and strengths that we find out about later in the book. He loves his family, but he's troubled by some of the things that he sees in his town. Next up, we have Brett. Brett is a friend of Dougy from school. He doesn't seem to understand why the Aboriginal kids and the white kids don't like each other sometimes. It should be said that Brett is new to this town. His father is the policeman, and he has a strong sense of justice and honour. Gracie. Dougy loves Gracie. Gracie is Dougy's older sister, and they get along very well. Gracie is a very talented and dedicated runner and competes at the highest level. She wants to do something good with her life, but she's scared to leave her family. Dougy wants Gracie to do well, but he also doesn't want her to leave him. This is a big struggle for Dougy throughout the book. Next up, we have Dougy's mum. Dougy's mum is a tough woman who looks after her kids by herself. She loves her children and she wants the best for them, but she worries about her 2 sons. She pushes Gracie to succeed, but she also thinks Dougy won't make much of himself because he's not very good at schoolwork. And lastly, we have Melissa. Melissa is a teenage girl who lives in the same town as Dougy, but her parents have money and they sent her to a boarding school. She made bad decisions and she was expelled, so she had to move back to Dougy's town. Melissa hates the town and she's very wild, which leads to conflict between the Aboriginals and the white people. So, this is just a very quick overview of the characters that you see in Dougy. Keep in mind, there are more characters that could be considered main characters, and we will look at them as well. This is just an overview of a couple of characters to help you out with your next task. So your task that I want you to do for this lesson is for each of these 6 characters, I want you to find one quote from the book that tells us something about that character. So for example, Dougy is a slow learner and he's not very good at schoolwork. Now, how do I know that? Here is a quote from the book that tells me this information. So Dougy says, "I'm not real good at reading and writing, eh? I'm not much good at anything." This is on page 10. Now, it's really important that when you're providing a quote from a book to support an idea, you need to write the page number next to the quote. This is important because it allows you to find the quote later very easily, and it allows your teacher to check and make sure that you've said the quote correctly. So always put the page number after a quote that you've provided. So just to recap, for this task, I want you to write down one quote, just one, for each of these 6 characters that tells us something about that character. So the quote is just a snippet of what is said in the book about that character. Now I want you to write your answers in your English book. So in your English book, it should look very similar to what I've provided here for you. Dougy is a slow learner and not very good at schoolwork. Here is a quote from the book that tells me, and then I put the quote. So you would have 6 of these in your school book by the end of this task.